Okay, everybody. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Um, I am Greg McReynolds, and I am so lucky to be the executive director at Idaho Rivers United. I live in Pocatello, and I have spent 2 decades working in land and water conservation, and I'm in my second year here at Idaho Rivers United. We have three goals tonight. First, we want to talk about our successes in 2025. Second, we want to talk about our plans for 2026. And finally, we want to hear from you. We're going to take questions at the end. We are excited to talk more about our campaigns and hear what you have to ask us. Um, Dave, let's go to the next slide. Um, Idaho Rivers United is in our 36th year of fighting for clean water and free-flowing rivers and advocating for wild fish and public lands. The durability of our mission and our work is reliant on our supporters and our excellent board. And I am going to quickly introduce our board. Um, Ken Anderson is our president, and he lives in Holiday, Utah. Morgan Buckert is our first board vice president, and she lives in Bellevue. Drew Stangland is our second vice president, and he lives in Coeur d'Alene. Bill Clark is our secretary and lives in Boise. Link Jackson is our treasurer, and he lives in Boise. Laverne Grusing lives in Julietta, which, if you haven't heard of it, that's up by Lewiston. Um, Mark Grassi splits his time between Napa Valley and Ketchum. Scott Christensen lives in Ketchum. Kristen Bruce lives in Boise. Devin Barker Hicks lives in Riggins. Brian Ellsworth lives in Boise. And Tom Stewart splits his time between Boise and Stanley. I want to thank our board for being on the Zoom tonight and for giving their time to staff for this public meeting. Our board members have been supporting us as volunteers, many of them as volunteers and supporters since our founding in 1990. This board is the foundation of IRU. And besides their support and advocacy, the board is also our most important group of ambassadors. They love to talk about our work, and they are easy to reach, and they'd love to hear from you. So if you see a familiar face, I'm sure they'd love to talk to you about IRU, particularly if you might have a river permit to talk about. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Tonight we're going to introduce you to our staff, and we're going to talk a little bit about our work and our path forward. We're going to take questions at the end. So if you have questions, type them into the chat. We do want to respect your time tonight. So we're going to try to stay under an hour. And if we don't get to your question before the end of the hour, we will get to it via email or the phone or some other way. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our communications manager, Dave Womack.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dave Womack. I run the communications here at IRU, and I am a river rat who ended up in Idaho because of its rivers. So working for IRU to broadcast our work far and wide was a no-brainer for me. I'm responsible for the messaging here, which shows up as our marketing, social media, newsletters, website, and generally any means in which you would hear about us and our work. Here are some of the bigger products I've been working on in the past year that I've been with IRU. Each one will have a QR code on the screens if you want to go see it on the website. The annual report is our biggest opportunity to give you and the general public an accounting of everything we did in the past year. Holding a physical summary of our work is still the best way to connect with our supporters, and this year's edition goes further with the companion webpage. There you can view the PDF of the file, but you can also read expanded editions of every article. If you did not receive one in the mail, please let us know. The most consistent product you're likely to see from us is the Currently. Our monthly newsletter updates you about ways in which you can get involved, upcoming events, campaigns we're working on, and what we see coming down the pike. If you don't already receive the Currently, or if you want to read a past edition, please visit the newsletter section of the website. Lastly is the project we just finished and we're very excited to announce, the Boise River Report Card. This is the result of the hard work of our Boise River stewards, who not only lead river cleanups, but this year performed over 100 water quality tests to help us get a snapshot of the Boise River's health. You can view it at idahorivers.org/report card or scan that QR code. Our aim is to be able to assess the state of the river annually and provide useful information for both the public and for decision makers. And with that, I would like to send it over to Sydney Anderson.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sydney Anderson. I'm originally from Oregon, just outside Portland, but I moved to Boise, Idaho about 6 years ago. And for almost 4 years, I have had the privilege to work at IU as the mining and policy manager. And what my role entails is reviewing and analyzing mining and exploration projects across the state, as well as keeping an eye on federal and state policy that could impact our rivers. And I want to start off by noting that IRU is not anti-mining, but we are against irresponsible mining practices and projects. And with the over 1,500 mine and exploration sites across the state, we are strongly opposed to three. Next slide. So first off, we have the Stibnite Gold Project. And this is just outside of Yellowpine, Idaho. It is a open pit gold mine that has been proposed by Perpetua Resources, and it is within the headwaters of the South Fork of the Salmon River. And so last January of 2025, the Forest Service approved Perpetua's plan for mining. However, we are in the middle of litigation over their decision to approve the project. We also have been reviewing all the additional permits that have been issued for the project and challenging those when necessary. And a little bit south, we have the Kumo project, close here to Boise. It's within the headwaters of the Boise River, and the Kumo project is an exploration project that is managed by Idaho Copper Corporation, and they're conducting exploratory drilling for copper, molybdenum, and silver. Their project was approved last year as well in March, and sorry about that. And while this is not a full-fledged mine plan, the mining company has been pitching this project to investors as turning into one of the largest open pit mines in the world. And then looking east, we have the Kilgore Exploration Project. And this project is managed by Exelon Resources, and they are drilling for the gold deposits in the foothills of the Centennial Mountains. It also is within the headwaters of Camas Creek, and that watershed is part of a system that helps recharge the Eastern Snake River Plain aquifer. Their project plan was approved back in 2021 for 5 years, and so their permit for exploratory drilling will be up at the end of the year. And while we have a long road ahead of us for each of these projects, I want to share some highlights from this past year. Next slide. Start off, a big win for us was we were challenging one of the water quality permits that was issued to Stibnite from the Idaho DEQ. And because of that challenge, the DEQ decided to revise that permit, and we are still waiting to see the modified version, which should be coming out at the end of the month. And with Kilgore, we are part of a larger coalition that worked with BYU Idaho researchers who conducted a water quality study around Kilgore. And what they looked at was how the water, the characteristics of that watershed, how it may be impacted by an open pit gold mine. And lastly, with Kumo, I have spent so much time talking with Idahoans, hundreds of Idahoans across the Treasure Valley and up into Idaho City about the Kumo project and the details of it, what could our future entail if it were to turn into an open pit mine, as well as gathering perspectives from local Idahoans. Next slide, please. And this is not to say, oh, sorry about lost my train of thought there. But at IRU, we are big proponents of responsible mining, and part of that is understanding there are some areas that are too valuable and too important to extract mineral resources. And what all three of those projects have in common is their location. They all sit in the headwaters of vital watersheds that are crucial to our economy, our ecosystems, and our local communities. And so each of these projects have the chance of leaving a lasting impact in these watersheds that span most of the state. And it's important that we continue to push back against these problematic projects, but more are going to keep popping up unless we continue to address the root of the problem. And by the title of this slide, a little fun fact for you guys. We govern our hard rock mining projects based on a law that was written in 1872, and it has been virtually unchanged since. And the General Mining Act of 1872 was written to handle things such as claim and property disputes. It was not written to manage modern day mines. And over the last 150 plus years, the law has been interpreted as making mining the best use of our public lands. The law has no language with regards to royalties, unlike the oil and gas industry, or any environmental safeguards, or any protections of, or any accountability that we can hold these mining companies to. And so a broader campaign that encompasses all of these projects that we are continuing to push for in 2026 is to reform our antiquated mining laws. We want to see laws that protect our communities, the environment, and our taxpayer dollars from the burden that these projects often leave behind. And with that, I will pass off to Stephen.
Hey, thanks, Sydney, and thanks everyone for being here tonight. I'm Stephen Pfeiffer. I'm our Wildfish and Hydropower Policy Manager. I'm from Haley, Idaho originally, and I've been with IRU for 7 years. And I would say that this work has certainly kept me in Idaho. Next slide, please. So the intersection of my two job titles, fish and hydropower policy, are really the Lower Snake River dams, and in the context of recovering salmon steelhead to Idaho. Those dams are a roadblock to salmon recovery, and that is really evidenced by their location in the hydro system of dams and reservoirs, and the upstream habitat that we have here in central Idaho. Next slide, please. So to recap 2025, keeping in mind that our ultimate goal is dam removal, and how are we doing? How are we getting there? The Resilient Columbia Basin Agreement, which was a federal tribal state agreement to develop clean energy and recover salmon throughout the Columbia Basin. Unfortunately, the federal government withdrew from that this past year, and it really left tribes in the states of Oregon and Washington back at the drawing board, and without the necessary investments to make the full plan happen. The good news is that the heart of that plan, the blueprint that the tribes and states came up with, the Columbia Basin Restoration Initiative, still exists. And so part of our work at IRU, alongside our partners throughout the region, is to advance pieces of that plan through various forums, like the Fish and Wildlife Amendment process, or securing different funds through Congress. So sort of a piecemeal approach in the wake of the federal exit from that comprehensive package. And so, due to that abrupt withdrawal, IRU also returned to court, really to make sure that, the system of dams and reservoirs is operated in a way that is beneficial to salmon in the near term. We still recognize that we need large-scale change, i.e. dam removal and river restoration, to really recover our fish. But in the meantime, there is important work to do to make sure that we're operating those dams and reservoirs to the best possible extent for our fish. And then, lastly, this past year, we continue to really communicate to Idahoans that we have everything to gain in our state from salmon recovery, whether it's the economics or the ecological functions, or, all the associated benefits just with the big project that we're moving for federal dams is, and the job creation associated with that. So looking forward to 2026, top of mind is that ongoing litigation and our preliminary injunction with the court, again, to really make sure that the flow through those dams is acting as much like a river as it can while the dams are still in place. And we look forward to a decision by the district judge, hopefully in the next few weeks on that. And then, in the context of managing the dams, Bonneville Power Administration, which is a federal agency, and they're charged with marketing the electricity that these dams produce, but they're also charged with recovering salmon populations that were decimated due to the initial construction of dams in the basin. So it's really vital to raise public and decision maker awareness of the role that Bonneville Power plays, or, frankly, doesn't play in fulfilling their obligations towards salmon. This public agency has been more of a roadblock over the last few decades than any sort of help. So there's a lot of work to be done in that arena. And then, from a more refreshing perspective, we are also excited to be engaged in a pilot project with an organization called the Salmon School, whose mission is to educate youth throughout salmon country globally via art and science on the connection of rivers and salmon to them. So we'll be partnering with Shoshone-Bannock tribes, ideally bringing some tribal youth to the Salmon River area to undergo some education and field work. So we really look forward to that as well. Next slide, please. And then, the second stool, I would say, of my job would be hydropower relicensing. And while the Lower Snake River dams are federal dams, there are plenty of private dams, specifically those three in Hells Canyon come to mind. And private dams operate on our public rivers via licensing through the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And these are 30, sometimes 50-year licenses. So when they come up for relicensing, it's a really kind of once in a generation opportunity to get some public input. So the next time around, there can be better provisions in those licenses for our rivers and for the health of our fisheries. So, throughout the next few years, we certainly plan to engage on projects that we have a history with, such as the Bear River Complex over in eastern Idaho. We're currently engaged with Felt Dam on the Teton River, which has some really interesting potential in relation to recovering Yellowstone cutthroat. And then two, highlight projects that we're thinking of as well going into 2026 is certainly that Hells Canyon complex. That final environmental report is out for public comment right now, which is the last piece before a likely relicensing. And so, the two priorities there are really to support priorities of the tribes in terms of getting to a place where salmon can be reintroduced upstream, and also ensuring accountability on water quality, specifically related to high temperatures downstream of the Hells Canyon dams, and also pollution from mercury that those dams create. And then lastly, voices have begun getting louder in eastern Idaho in relation to the Teton Dam, which is really infamous for its failure in 1976. So what we do is really work with a coalition of other nonprofits there to make sure we're on the same page in terms of, understanding the water allocation system in the Upper Snake River, and, understanding why rebuilding Teton Dam is a very bad idea, and, what are some better ideas that exist. So excited to be engaging across the state, I'd say, with our hydropower relicensing. With that, I will pass it to Lindsay Painter.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lindsay Painter. I'm the Volunteer and Engagement Manager. I've been working with Idaho Rivers United for 3 years. In my role with IRU, I oversee our volunteer and stewardship programs, arrange community outreach opportunities, and assist with organizing events. In addition to these roles, I track donations in our database and help steward relationships with our donors and supporters. So if you ever have any questions about your donations, Ron Lawson, who you'll meet later, and I are your primary contacts. Before I jump into my presentation, I just wanted to emphasize how excited we are that everyone took time out of their evenings to join us and learn more about our work. So with that, let's jump on in. Next slide, please. Our volunteers are making a huge difference in our rivers and our local communities. I'm so proud of the work they are accomplishing. I'm excited to share what our volunteers did with you last year, and also share some opportunities that you can join us for in 2026. So let's take a moment to look at IRU's 2025 Volunteer and Stewardship Impact. Last year, we had 101 volunteers. We added 101 volunteers to our program, leading to 476 individuals donating 2,508 hours to protect Idaho's rivers. They removed trash, led outreach opportunities, provided event support, participated in phone banking sessions, assisted with office administration, and so much more. This table here highlights some of the exciting stats from our 2025 program. Our Boise River Stewardship Program saw a 67% increase in participation, with 28 river stewards and 7 stewardship ambassadors joining the program. Our stewardship ambassadors are returning stewards that have applied to take on a leadership role in our program. Collectively, our stewards led 15 community cleanups, completed 103 water samples, and volunteered 486 hours. All the data that our stewards collected is displayed in our Boise River report card that Dave talked about earlier. Next, we have our Adopt the Greenbelt program. This program oversees our adopted section on the Boise River that extends from Capitol Boulevard to Broadway Avenue. This is a highly used section of the Boise River. This program was led by 4 program ambassadors that organized 6 cleanups for 135 volunteers, and they removed 500 pounds of trash. Lastly, I'd like to point out our end of float season cleanup. As we all know, floating the Boise River has become a favorite pastime for visitors and residents of the Treasure Valley alike. Following the close of the floating season, we invite the Treasure Valley community to join us for river cleanup and cap the day with a very fun after party. Last year, we recruited 230 volunteers from our community to remove 1,800 pounds of trash along the Boise River. Additionally, we collaborated with Dive Magic to run a cleanup in Quinn's Pond. In total, in 2005, our volunteers removed 3,805 pounds of trash, which is incredible. And we will move on to the next slide. In addition to our cleanups and river stewardship efforts, our volunteers mobilized 3,500 calls to Idaho representatives to help protect public lands. They provided river stewardship opportunities for 110 youth, and they volunteered 400 hours to represent IRU in our local communities across Idaho, and we also had one event in Salt Lake City, Utah. Next slide, please. Now that we've shown you all the exciting work our volunteers are doing, I'd like to invite you to join us in 2026. This program here is our Boise River Stewardship Program. This program is designed to create stronger advocates for the Boise River through stewardship, education, community science, and community engagement. Program requirements: all Boise River stewards must attend a mandatory training on April 23rd. They are required to complete 1 water quality survey and 3 additional activities that benefit the Boise River. These include self-led cleanups, additional water quality surveys, and participating in outreach activities to share information about the health of the Boise River and the Boise River Stewardship Program. Signups are open now until April 7th, 2026. Next slide, please. Here is a list of additional volunteer opportunities for 2026. We have 3 opportunities on the Boise River. Our spring cleanup, which is happening on April 11th. Our end of float season cleanup that I highlighted earlier, happening on September 12th. And our Adopt the Greenbelt program, which runs monthly, April through October. Our first cleanup will be on April 26th, and it'll be partnered with a coffee social right beforehand. And then most of our volunteer opportunities occur in the Boise area because this is where our office is, but we're working on expanding our stewardship efforts across the state. We are adding cleanups in Coeur d'Alene on the Spokane River, in Idaho Falls on the Snake River, and on the Salmon River during Salmon Fest weekend. To sign up for these opportunities or learn more about volunteer opportunities you can be involved in, please check out idahorivers.org/volunteer or scan the QR code. And then, as David mentioned earlier, please sign up for the Currently. And then I also do a monthly volunteer newsletter called The Tributary, which you can sign up for by signing up for the Currently or emailing me. Next slide, please. And so this is my last slide, but I wanted to invite you all to join us for the Sawtooth Salmon Festival. The Sawtooth Salmon Festival is a free community celebration of the 900-mile journey that Idaho salmon take to return to Redfish Lake from the ocean. We'll have live music, salmon tours, tribal dancers, speakers, kids activity, artists and vendors, films, and so much more. If you've been to the Salmon Fest before, you'll you'll notice that we've changed the structure of this event and we've moved it to Mountain Village. We are also hosting events at other local businesses in the Stanley area, and it is so much fun. Last year we had 1,000 attendees join us from across all activities, and we'd love to have you there. We will be looking for volunteers, supporters, vendors, and entertainment. If you're interested in supporting this year's festival, please check out our website at sawtoothsalmonfest.org. And in addition to this, we have other exciting events coming up, and I encourage you to take a look at our event calendar and sign up for our newsletters to stay up to date on all the happenings at IRU. With that, I'll pass it on to Nick Kunith.
Thanks, Lindsay. Hello, everybody, and thanks for making the time again to be with us tonight. My name is Nick Kunith. I'm the Conservation Director here at IRU, and I've been with IRU since April of 2022, and just like kind of everyone else has said, I feel incredibly lucky to be a part of this team and get to work on these issues that really have a real impact for our rivers and the individuals and communities that love as well as depend on them. My role as a conservation director is really kind of supporting our core conservation team of Stephen and Sydney and working on a lot of those projects alongside them. And I just want to touch on a few of the other campaigns kind of outside of the core issues that they had mentioned. Next slide, please. So we've been closely monitoring and doing what we can to push back on the attempts to sell and diminish our public lands. And I don't think this was necessarily on any of our bingo cards for an anticipated campaign as we started this year, but when it became clear that the threats that were originally coming from Senator Lee of Utah were very real, we set aside a lot of our other kind of campaigns and projects that we could to dedicate a full court press on this issue. And while public lands at first may seem a little outside of our traditional scope of engagement, public lands, access, and the values that they represent are inextricably linked to river protection. And when I think of my favorite rivers, the places that have proven time and time again to provide some of my most powerful experiences, they were all accessed through public lands at the very least, and often flowed directly through them. I'm sure many of you on this call were a part of our initial phone banking effort that we launched last spring, directed at the Idaho delegation in response to the Lee Amendment. And we thank you for answering our calls and showing up when we needed you. We knew this issue demanded more than a simple email campaign that can all too easily be ignored. And we filled up voicemail boxes of Idaho offices and DC offices. And the very day following our first kind of phone banking push, our delegation took a stand and effectively killed the Lee Amendment. 2 weeks ago, we returned to the phones with volunteers to mount a similar pressure campaign, but this time against the nomination of Steve Pierce, who's been nominated to lead the BLM, which we essentially view as hiring the fox to guard the chicken coop when it comes to public lands and their sales and management. We're still waiting for a full Senate vote to be announced on his nomination, but we're incredibly proud of all of our volunteers and our efforts to pick up the phones and make sure Idahoans' voices are heard on this issue. Together, these campaigns, collectively have resulted in thousands of calls, hundreds of voicemails, and we know we'll have a tangible outcome on these upcoming proceedings and certainly on the Lee Amendment vote. Next slide, please. So part of that phone banking effort was really made possible through our partnerships with the Conservation Voters for Idaho, who have the technology to make something like that happen. And as we look ahead to the rest of 2026 and beyond, it's abundantly clear that our successes will be made possible through continued collaboration and partnership. IRU continues to hold a leadership position with several regional and national campaigns that are having a real impact on the ground here in Idaho, but as well as offices in the halls of DC. Whether through the Hydropower Reform Coalition, Columbia Snake River Campaign, or the Wild and Scenic Rivers Coalition, we're continuing to build relationships that ensure that your voice as an IRU supporter is heard and accounted for. And these relationships also go beyond that of IRU with our tribal and NGO and agency partners. This includes all of you on this call. Our supporters are key for us when it comes to mounting pressure when it counts, learning about new threats from the folks that are experiencing these issues, and helping us build a community that stands up for our rivers and fisheries. Next slide, please. Looking ahead, as you kind of heard from both Sydney and Stephen, we hope to see some wins in the near term, specifically around some of these major campaigns that are working their way through the legal challenges. But we're sure to run into new issues that aren't on our radars yet. And when those happen, we'll adapt and address them when they inevitably pop up. But one project that we're excited about to be kind of on the proactive side of things is this economic study that we've contracted with the Bozeman-based firm Headwaters Economics to undertake. We've asked them to evaluate the economics associated with dam breach and service replacement for the four lower Snake River dams. And while there's been many studies that focus on the raw costs associated with this scenario, we're working with them to extrapolate those figures and apply them to realistic regional investment that would follow any breach and comparable service replacement. And we believe that by, focusing on these pocketbook issues will help resonate within these communities, within the corridor that have traditionally been unmoved by, the environmental approach. And we hope that this approach will be able to gain support and move Idaho in general into a more productive side of the conversation surrounding these dams and the harms they're causing salmon and steelhead. We anticipate the study to be finalized this spring, and we rolled out kind of late spring, early summer. So we'll be hitting the road, sharing the results far and wide, and we'll be hearing more from us about that once it's all finalized. But really looking forward to that. And with that, I'll pass it on to Ren and welcome any questions that you have for us and the whole team once we get to that part of the presentation. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ren Lawson. I'm the development director for IRU. I have been with this organization for about 5.5 years now, and I've served in two different capacities. Currently, my role as development director focuses primarily on building relationships with our supporters to set us up for long-term success, finding new sources of funding for our work, and helping to ensure we have the resources to just accomplish everything that I heard about today and all of the work ahead. Our work keeps growing. There's 107,000 miles of river in Idaho. The jobs are endless. And really, it is our supporters that make that work happen. So thank you again for being here tonight, for being a part of this meeting. You really are playing such a critical role in all of the strides that we are making locally, regionally, and nationally. We're making tangible progress in all of these areas that you heard about today. And our grassroots work is truly at the core of it. One of the things that is so unique about IRU is that with most nonprofits, about 80% of their funding comes from major grants and large foundations. At IRU, we have kind of an inverse relationship with that. Roughly 90% of our funding comes from small individual donors and small family foundations, not grants and corporate foundations. So at our core, we truly are a supporter-driven organization. And everything that we do is because of you, and you are the driving force behind all of it. And so we're so grateful for your support. And we're proud to be your voice for our rivers. We're grateful that you entrust us with this mission and to make a difference. On a personal note, I've worked in conservation nonprofits for most of my career. My longest run has been at IRU. And this organization is truly the most incredible one that I have been a part of. We have a small team who you've met today, but the work that we accomplish is just so far beyond what our size and means should dictate as an organization. And the work truly speaks for itself. And perhaps what impresses me the most about IRU and what's really unique about us is that despite the circumstances we find ourselves in and the challenges ahead, we just don't give up. We've been working for rivers for 36 years. And no matter the landscape around conservation, the political, the economic, or social climate, we just do not stop making progress. Sometimes that means we have to get creative or take really unexpected approaches, but we continue to really focus on safeguarding our rivers and making progress and improving their health and vitality and the protections for them across our state. And really, it's you, your involvement, your phone calls, your emails to elected officials, the comments you make on things like proposed mines and forest management plans, and the volunteering you do. That is really, truly the heart of it and what makes it all possible. And so much of what we enjoy today, the rivers that we love to be on, to fish on, to spend our time near, are thanks to the legacy of this organization and really you, the people who are at the heart of it. So thank you again. I would love to connect anytime if you have questions about what's going on in our organization, how you can engage at a deeper level. I'm here to connect. That is what I do. So. Thank you again. With that being said, I invite Greg to wrap up the meeting and we will open the floor for questions with his guidance.
Thank you guys so much for being here. Before we get to questions, I do just want to pause and thank this incredible IRU staff. It really does. It takes courage to make thousands of phone calls, and it takes optimism, to really look beyond the status quo and think about the possibility. Um, it's it's taken moxie to fight these public lands challenges that we've experienced over the last couple of months. And things like FERC, federal energy relicensing, and dam proposals and mine proposals, that takes incredible patience and knowledge to wade through. So yeah, I just want to say thank you to this staff, and want to thank everybody on the call for supporting this staff in their work for our rivers. And if you have questions, we'll get to them. And if you don't, we'll adjourn, and everybody can head back to whatever fun thing they were doing before this. Okay, we got a quiet group. Um, I will tell a quick story while we just wait to see if anybody has something to ask. Drew's hopping in with a question. I'll just say that we've been phone banking. Nick mentioned phone banking. Lindsay mentioned phone banking. One thing that is so special about IRU is how many people just call us back. It's pretty fun to call people to ask them to advocate for public lands, and then 10 or 20 minutes later, your phone rings and it's some name that you recognize, and it's a person just saying, "Hey, I saw that you called. What can I do?" Um, that's pretty gratifying. Um, Drew's asking who's coming to the Coeur d'Alene for a river cleanup. I think, Lindsay, are you on tap for that?
Hey, oops. Sorry. Yes, I am. So actually, Drew and I are planning the Coeur d'Alene River cleanup. Currently, I'm the only staff member planning to go, but we might coordinate some more IRU staff as we kind of get some more details lined up.
Rick, I'm trying to figure out how to let you ask a question. I see that your hand is up. I'm going to let Dave see if he can figure out how to let you ask a question. Um, Brian is asking us about the Rios to Rios project on the Klamath, and if there's any opportunities to explore with that in Idaho. I'm going to kick that to Nick or Steven. Looks like Nick's ready to take it. Take that one away, Nick.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. We actually met with the Rios to Rivers project folks a little while ago. They are looking at trying to get involved more so on the snake campaign now that the Klamath is, I wouldn't say really wrapped up, but kind of setting their sights on the next project they want to undertake. So they reached out to us and a lot of other kind of coalition partners that are working on that issue on trying to get tapped in on who's involved and what's going on. And yeah, we put them in touch, or they're already in touch with a lot of the folks who I was going to recommend them to reach out to, primarily with the Nez Perce tribe and some of their youth groups. So we're going to continue to stay in touch with them as things develop, but we're hoping to have them out. And I think they're going to be in Idaho this spring and summer that may kind of coincide with a river trip that we have planned to try to get them on the lower Salmon and see some of those different tributaries in different areas. But we'll be trying to connect with them as much as we can. But yeah, it's certainly a great model of highlighting youth involvement and kind of the connection to these different river campaigns that are pretty resonant with the work we're doing.
Greg, I'm unmuted.
We can hear you. What's your question, Rick? It's great to see you.
Yeah, the very same to you and all the good folks at IRU. My question was really for Nick, and I've been interested in this Headwaters economics Headwaters program that he is doing. Obviously, the economics for a free-flowing river are sky high on returns, and here we have Nez Perce County, the lowest performing community in Region 2. They've been the last in all the economics figures for 25 years. It just seems that there should be a great wake-up call somehow constructed to get Nez Perce County back to understanding what they're missing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's is some of the stuff we've asked the economics firm to try to look at. That, yeah, we do know that's pretty clear that that area is not performing like the rest of Idaho. You know, when you hear the growth that's happening in Boise and some of these other places is not the same for Lewiston and kind of the rest of the county at large. So it paints a pretty clear picture of just, yeah, economic lag that is not taking place there. And we're really, I think, really sets the stage for the message that we're trying to convey of a lot of upside, very little risk, that at this point, you know, things are not going as well as they may think they are, despite having a lot of connections or yeah, passion for the dams and the industry that maybe people have grown up around or come to know, but trying to present it as, yeah, that opportunity of not what is being taken away, but what could be provided in replacement. And yeah, trying to get away from the salmon versus dams conversation and just focus on what's at stake to grow. What's the opportunity that's being missed here if we don't look at this project from that lens? And we do think that'll, yeah, resonate with a lot of people that just aren't interested. You know, at this point, this conversation and debate about the dams has been going on for 20 years. And, you know, if you keep trying to do the same thing over and over again, you're not always going to convince people. So we got to come at it from a different angle. And this is one that we're pretty excited about.
Yeah, Nick, I think that's great stuff. I don't know if you've worked with the Department of Labor there in Lewiston, but they run the economics in Region 2 for ever since 75 have just sucked. So that's a nice impartial source to be using for building your case.
Yeah, I believe the firm, you know, they're pulling from kind of all that state data, county by county. So it's leave it up to, you know, the economics folks to really dive into the numbers. But we've seen some kind of the preliminary reports that, yeah, they're pulling all of that kind of countywide data, but also against the state and trying to look at comparable projects or find other analogies that they can look at from kind of opportunity estimates from other places across the country as well. But yeah, I'm more than happy to connect off the call anytime if you'd like Rick to chat about this more. But thanks for the question and being here tonight.
You bet. Thanks for the opportunity.
Well, with that, we're 45 minutes in. I want to thank everybody for joining. If you didn't talk to us tonight, we'd love to talk to you. That's a good portion of what we do every day is talk to people. So send us an email, give us a call. We're excited to talk about rivers. And if you got a permit, we definitely want to hear from you. Okay. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Good night. And thanks for joining.